Let's back up for just a second and talk about Minnesota's 2007, thanks Tim Pawlenty, another one we can blame him for, and his 25 by 25, where the state of Minnesota has to have 25% of its energy as renewable energy by 2025. That is why you're seeing so much solar, so much wind, so much all of this renewable energy push is not because people want it, not because it makes sense, not because it's cost effective, but because it's mandated by the state. And that should make people furious. Go ahead.
It should make people furious, and you're absolutely right. And I think you can look at almost any one of these projects and just dub it Solyndra of the North.
Yes.
We have mandated renewable energy in the state of Minnesota. It actually was a federal idea brought here and to many states. And instead of the states saying no, the states said, sure, sign us up. We'd love to be part of this. And in the state of Minnesota, the 25 by 25 was passed in 2007. The mandate ends up basically mandating wind. There is some solar, but solar produces so little energy. Wind doesn't produce much energy either, but it does better than solar.
Well, and our solar energy projects in the state of Minnesota all keep going belly up. So we are having a problem with that.
Yes, we are.
Or the city of Minneapolis can use the convention center to put solar panels on the top of it. That helps a little bit, but basically they're just going belly up. You're right, though, it's wind. You're seeing a lot of wind.
That's really where most of the money is going from the federal government, and that's where most of the industrial scale renewable clean energy is being put up.
You know, I want you keep talking about the Public Utilities Commission, and I think a lot of people don't know what the Public Utility Commission is. So this law that we were talking about was passed in the state of Minnesota, signed into law by Governor Tim Pawlenty. You also have your counties and your cities who can pass ordinances and do different things. So you had Goodhue County did what your commissioners should have done.
Absolutely.
They came in, they said, all right, Minnesota has this law, this is what it says. We have a right to have a huge setback if we want to. And your county commissioners did what the people asked them to do while following the law. In the meantime, the Public Utilities Commission, nobody's ever heard of them. Nobody knows what happens, and they undermined your county commissioners. Do you want to tell people a little bit about the Public Utilities Commission, who they are and what they do?
Sure. It's a 5-member board. They're appointed by the governor of Minnesota. So up until this last year, all 5 members had been appointed by Tim Pawlenty. And he, again, is the one who introduced and pushed the renewable energy standard in Minnesota. So I guess you can kind of imagine that the commissioners on that board were aware that that was the desire not only of the governor who appointed them, but of the legislature in Minnesota, because the mandate was passed by an overwhelming majority, both of Republicans and Democrats.
It was unbelievable how many Republicans voted for that horrendous piece of legislation. Mm-hmm. I call that legislation, before this year, the worst legislation ever passed in the state of Minnesota.
I think you're right. People in the Twin Cities may not realize it, but it's driving up electric rates, and you've just barely seen the tip of the iceberg. They're going to go much higher. It is forcing through much higher levels of transmission capacity. So the CapEx 2020 project, they're saying it's partly for reliability that we need anyway, but a huge part of it is to be able to shove all of this wind energy, which is unstable, unreliable energy, onto the grid.
Obama just fast-tracked that.
Right. And of course that has its own acronym, RRTT, Rapid Response Transmission Team, because suddenly we need to force through transmission. And it just so happens that one of the 7 lines in the entire United States that are being fast-tracked, that they discussed just last week at the White House, happens to go right through Goodhue County.
That's your transmission line.
That'd be our transmission line.
To pay for your windmills.
Yes, so apparently that's going on too. So the commission, back to the Public Utilities Commission, now that Mark Dayton is our new governor, he got to appoint the new chair of the Public Utilities Commission, and that is Ellen Anderson, former state senator Ellen Anderson.
Former state senator who sat on the Energy Committee. She was the chair of the Energy Committee, and we have her on tape saying that she didn't know coal had carbon in it. And she's the chair of the Energy Commission.
Yes, and I watched a tape of her during one of the debates, explaining that one of the reasons that we had to have cap and trade as part of our renewable energy standard is because the 10-year-olds in the state are terrified that they're going to die from catastrophic global warming. So to save them, we're going to have cap and trade, which is an integral part of this whole renewable energy standard. It's built in. That whole idea that somehow Tim Pawlenty flirted with cap and trade, looked under the hood of the car and decided it was a bad idea and didn't do it is baloney.
They had it all planned out.
They did.
Didn't matter what the people of Minnesota wanted. Certainly didn't matter what the people of Goodhue County wanted. What could make Tim Pawlenty have a generous donation to his presidential campaign, and what could get rid of T. Boone Pickens' wind turbines.
Right. So in the meantime, we have the Public
disgusting.
Utilities Commission, who is appointed by the governor. We have the new head of the Public Utilities Commission appointed by Dayton.
And wait, the Republicans could have gotten rid of Ellen Anderson. She didn't have to be the head of the Public Utilities Commission, but they had no backbone. And that Julie Rosen, I hold her personally responsible for that. She, during the hearing, we had called them, talked to them. I know you guys down in Goodhue County did too, saying there's no way you cannot let her be the chair of the Public Utilities Commission and all the power that goes along with it. They did nothing.
No, they could have gotten rid of her during the last session, and they failed to do that. So instead, there has been a bit of a prolonged process. There's one little safeguard in the Minnesota law, and that little safeguard said that the Public Utilities Commissioners must, doesn't say may, must apply more stringent county ordinance, if there is a more stringent county ordinance, to the site permits that they issue for projects like this. And guess what? We have a more stringent county ordinance, and it's a good one. And it was based on about 5,000 pages of studies and documents and scientific evidence.
5,000 pages?
5,000 pages. And as it turns out, when we look to say, well, how did the state come up with their standards? It looks like in the early 1990s, when Enron was the major wind developer in Minnesota, the then Environmental Quality Board, and a lot of those functions are now part of the Department of Commerce, had a chat with Enron Wind and said, what do you think? And Enron said, we think this is good. And they said, oh, good, that's our standards. Okay, so there is no basis, there's no scientific basis, there is no technical basis, there is no safety basis, there is no sound standard basis for the state's standards, if they even exist. And we've argued that they don't actually exist in the form of like rules that have been set, which is what they're supposed to have done. But nonetheless, the county did very good due diligence and a ton of study, came up with an ordinance. The state has some sort of rules that came from a conversation with Enron Wind.
In the 90s.
In the 90s. And actually, if you look at their history, there are a lot of counties with more stringent standards. And historically, they have applied all of those county standards. They never said what was the basis for the standards. They never said, we don't like your standard. They just applied them in all the other cases. But
not in your case.
Not in our case. They got to our case, and I would say that's due to several things. One is it is more stringent, not more stringent than all counties, but it has some more stringent even standards than some of the counties that they've already applied. The other big factor, we are a much more densely populated area than areas where big wind already exists in Minnesota.
That's a really interesting point. A lot of the areas that they put up these giant turbines that are as tall as the Fauché Tower, they're so huge, but there aren't very many people there. So when people complain, who's to complain? There aren't very many. And I think now, thanks to you guys, I think we saw some other communities who tried to fight it, too little, too late, not enough people, whatever the case may be. And by the time you guys came in, now you guys are a force to be reckoned with.
Yes, I agree, Sue, and it's been really interesting. So far, there's a lot of things that people said weren't going to happen that have happened. They didn't think we could get our county to update their ordinance, and they didn't think we could get it updated in time. And of course, that happened. In the last session, there was a bill introduced by Tim Kelly and Steve Drazkowski, required some mandatory setbacks from property lines. And this really was getting at the issue of more population density. They aren't planning to even attempt to put these very large wind turbines into downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul. That would be absurd because there's no room to put them
We
in.
have little baby ones they're putting in now. And it's quite a joke. When they first put them in, they bought them used from California. When they first brought them in the winter, none of them would turn. So I have this group of people that text each other, and it's, oh, just drove by North St. Paul, their turbine's not turning. Oh, went through Anoka, went through Buffalo. Nope, still not turning. They finally did do something to get them working.